Thank you for joining us again on the Nick Walker Ministries YouTube channel. If you haven't yet, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit that like button. That is a great help to us if this is your first time joining us here. I want to share something with you really quick that I just found very interesting, and I really think it speaks to the church culture of our day. It's in 1 Samuel chapter 4, and if you need the backstory on this, basically what's happened up to this point is that the priesthood of Israel has become totally corrupt. And Eli's the high priest. He's got two sons named Hophni and Phinehas, and they are in charge of the Ark of the Covenant. They're in the priesthood. And so if you read up to this point in 1 Samuel chapter 4, you'll find that there's so much wickedness, so much corruption in the church. And we can talk about all the wickedness going on around the world, and there was certainly much wickedness to go around in this world, in this secular culture of this day as well from 1 Samuel. But the real problem that God had was the problems going on within the church. There was great hypocrisy in the priesthood, in the leadership. And I think that really speaks to what's going on in our culture today. And this is certainly not a ministry that jumps on and names names and calls out preachers. This is not some people feel like they have a watchdog ministry, if you will, where they just have to get on here and give you all the 10 preachers to avoid. And I don't wish to do that, but I do want to say, just as a general overview, there's such hypocrisy and such filth going on in many churches across the nation. Not all churches, and that certainly doesn't speak to all churches and all ministries. But the same problem that was going on then is the same problems that are going on today. And in Ecclesiastes, it does say that history will repeat itself. And so I want you to just listen very carefully what goes on with this story. And I try to make this as brief as I can. And so the army of Israel was about to go fight the Philistines, and they go to fight the Philistines, and the Philistines took them out. They slaughtered several thousand men. And then the Israelites realized, we don't have the Ark of the Covenant. Now keep in mind, because the leadership is corrupt, the whole nation is corrupt. Anything that happens in leadership trickles from the top down. And this speaks for nations, it speaks for cities, it speaks for any government, and it certainly speaks to churches. If the leaders of the church are walking in sin, walking in blatant corruption, that will flow from the top down. And so because the condition of the priesthood was poor, the condition of the entire nation was poor. And so they go to fight the Philistines in battle. And the Philistines drew up in battle and array to meet Israel. And when the battle spread, Israel was defeated before the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 men on the battlefield. That's the first 3 verses of chapter 4. And so they asked, why has the Lord defeated us today with the Philistines? And they said, let us go from ourselves from Shiloh to the Ark of the Covenant. Let us bring the Ark of the Covenant in, that it may come alongside us and deliver us from the power of our enemies. Notice how they said this. They go into battle without the Ark of the Covenant, which was the glory of the Lord, and 4,000 men get slaughtered. And so they say, well, if we just bring the Ark of the Covenant and bring it among us, if we just have this symbol of God in our midst, our enemy can't defeat us. And so they carry the Ark of the Covenant all the way back to the battlefield. And to Eli's 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were the ones carrying the Ark of the Covenant. And these are probably 2 of the most corrupt priests in the entire priesthood, certainly throughout the entirety of the Old Testament. And as the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all of Israel shouted with a great shout. I want you to hear this. I don't like to read all of sections this large on a video like this, but I want you to follow along with me. This is verse 5 of 1 Samuel 4. I think this is so interesting, so powerful. And again, as I said at the beginning, this really speaks to the state of our nation today. And as the Ark of the Covenant came into the camp, all of Israel shouted with a great shout, so that the earth resounded. Well, this sounds like it's about to get good. And when the Philistines heard the noise, they said, what does the noise of this great shout in the camp of the Hebrews mean? What does that mean? Why are they shouting like that? And as you're reading it, it sounds like, this is getting better and better. Then they understood the ark of the Lord had come into the camp, and the Philistines were afraid, and they said, God has come into the camp. Okay, this just sounds like it's getting better and better and better. They hear the shout. What does this mean? It confuses them. And then they say, oh, their God has come into the camp. That's what happened. And they said, woe to us, for nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us. Who shall deliver us from the hand of these mighty gods? These are the gods who smote the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness. See, they're remembering what God used to do. They're remembering the miraculous power that God used to deliver the Israelites from Egyptian bondage. They're beginning to call to mind all that God has already done. We're talking about pagans. We're talking about people who have nothing to do with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they're remembering what God has done. Take courage, and then they said, these are the gods who smote the Egyptians. Take courage, O men, O Philistines, or you will become slaves to the Hebrews, as they have been slaves to you. Therefore, be men and fight. So somebody's trying to encourage them, but like we know the Ark of the Covenant's coming to the camp, but you're going to have to be a man, and you're going to have to be men and fight, and you're going to have to go to battle anyway. And so when you're reading this, it sounds like, okay, the Philistines are about to go and get slaughtered because the Ark of God has come into the camp. Very next verse says this: so the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated, and every man fled to his tent, and the slaughter was very great, for there fell of Israel 30,000 foot soldiers, and the ark of God was taken, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, died. And that was a prophecy that would be spoken. Like he said, you'll know this is a sign of change and transition when your two sons die on the same day. Now, listen to this story. I mean, you've just heard this, that they brought the ark of God in. The Philistines were very afraid. There was a great shout, and the earth resounded. I know a lot of Pentecostals shout when they read that verse. I've read this verse in churches before, and people start shouting right there, so that the earth resounded. Oh, yes, amen. And then you find out that the enemy defeated them anyway. And the question is, why? If the Ark of the Covenant was with the army, if God's presence was among the people in the camp, why did they suffer defeat? And the answer is this: you cannot have a symbol of religion in your camp without being in covenant with that God. You cannot just have it. Would be like me laying my Bible on my desk and knowing what's in there, but saying, well, because I have this Bible on my desk, the enemy can't harm me. Because I have this Bible laying on my desk, the enemy cannot tempt me with pornography. And if you don't know my testimony, I suffered from a horrible pornography addiction for almost a decade of my life. I was spent bound in lust and pornography. It would be like me saying, well, because I have this Bible laying on my desk, the enemy, he cannot tempt me. And friends, I just want to say this to you: that couldn't be further from the truth. It's one thing to know this Bible and go to church and sing the songs and do robotic muscle memory praise and lift your hands when everybody else is lifting your hands. But unless you have intimacy with the God who wrote the book, unless you have intimacy with the God you're singing the songs to, I don't care how many songs you sing, I don't care how many hours you spend in church, I don't care how many prayer meetings you attend, and I don't care how many Bible studies you go to with your small groups and your youth groups, you will not have victory over the enemy until you come into covenant with the covenant. And the reason I say it that way is because this was the Ark of the Covenant. This represented God's covenant with Israel, but the people were not in covenant with that covenant. They were not in covenant with the God of this covenant. And they just wanted to bring a symbol of covenant into their camp and say, well, he's going to deliver us now. But unless you're walking under that covering, unless you're walking under the covering of covenant, you will not have victory. And so I wanted to jump on very quickly on our YouTube channel, just minister this to you, that it's not enough to have religious rituals. It is not enough to have the songs and know the scriptures. We've got to have intimacy, and we've got to have an ear to hear and a heart to perceive that which God is saying to our nation, that which God is saying to our people today, because it's not enough to have as you read this story, it's not even enough to have a shout that makes the earth resound. You've got to have intimacy with the God who wrote the book, and until you do, you will not have victory. And so I just speak and prophesy victory over you today. But even more than that, I just declare that this will be the year that you learn to have intimacy, that you learn to have covenant with the God who's made covenant from the foundation of the world. God bless you.